What happens when the league's most feared defender locks eyes with the GOAT and the NBA's most unstoppable dunker dares to claim his throne? In the 1996 NBA Finals, Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp didn't just challenge Michael Jordan. They awakened a force they couldn't contain. It wasn't just another chapter in Michael Jordan's career. It was a turning point. After the unimaginable loss of his father after the 1993 championship, the man who inspired his journey, MJ, stepped away from basketball. But his return was heralded as the new coming of a god to earth. In 1995, when Jordan announced, "I'm back," the world watched. And it didn't take long for him to remind everyone why he was called the GOAT. But this time, the game had evolved, and so had the challengers. The Seattle SuperSonics were now there too. A defensive powerhouse led by Gary Payton, the league's fiercest defender, and Shawn Kemp, a human highlight reel. The Sonics were a new breed of competition, and I can assure you, they weren't scared of anyone. What the Sonics didn't realize was that Jordan's return wasn't about settling scores. It was about honoring his father's memory with a championship, and that meant there was no room for failure. It wasn't just a battle for a ring. It was a fight for a legacy, fueled by heartbreak, resilience, and the unmatched fire of Michael Jordan. The Sonics were no ordinary team. In 1996, they were arguably the best defensive team in the league. Led by Gary Payton, who that season won the Defensive Player of the Year award as a guard, and who also led the NBA in steals with 2.9 per game, Seattle had the second best defensive rating in the league. But the most incredible thing is that at the same time, they were the third team with the third highest pace in the NBA. A strange combination, even more so considering that the dead ball era was getting closer and closer. But at the same time, they made the Sonics game extremely attractive. It was normal to see Gary Payton lock down the superstar of the opposing team, getting steals and deflections that turned into an incredible dunk by Shawn Kemp on the other end. It was normal to see them physically destroy any other franchise, demonstrating an athleticism that very few teams were able to contain. But in 1996, it was also common to see them win. The Sonics, led by George Karl, racked up 64 wins in the 1995-1996 regular season. But still, the beast they were facing was even more intimidating. The 1996 Chicago Bulls were remembered for many things. For being Dennis Rodman's first regular season with the Chicago Bulls. For being the third season with the third highest average margin of victory in league history. But above all, they were remembered for achieving the best regular season record in NBA history. Led by Michael Jordan, who once again became the NBA's leading scorer that same season, Chicago achieved a record of 72 wins and 10 losses. Michael wanted his post-retirement career to be as successful as his pre-retirement career. He wanted to make his father, wherever he was, proud of him. And to do that, he had to win the NBA championship. The Bulls ran roughshod all over their opponents during the early rounds of the playoffs. In the first round, they beat the Miami Heat of Tim Hardaway and Alonzo Mourning by 3-0. Another guard/big man combo that wowed basketball fans. In the conference semifinals, Chicago beat another tremendously tough team in 5 games. The Knicks of Patrick Ewing, John Starks, and Charles Oakley. Another team that used their physicality at every opportunity and whose games looked like real battles of ancient times. But at the same time, another team that could only succumb to the Chicago Bulls of the best player in history. And in the conference finals, Chicago swept the Orlando Magic of Penny Hardaway and a young Shaquille O'Neal, who had already become one of the best young players in the entire NBA. Although it hadn't been a pleasant road, the Bulls' superiority was so incredible that it allowed them to reach the finals with hardly a scratch. For their part, the Sonics had beaten Mitch Richmond's Sacramento Kings in 4 games in the first round. They had also beaten the defending champions of Houston Rockets of Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, and Robert Horry in 4 games. And they had beaten the Utah Jazz of Karl Malone and John Stockton in 7 games. Only Utah could cause them more problems than they expected. And most importantly, they had Gary Payton, the only player in the NBA who could guard Michael Jordan in the finals. When it came time for the two teams to play in the ultimate stage, everyone was glued to the TV. Absolutely no one wanted to miss the moment when either Jordan would once again become the NBA's greatest legend or be dethroned forever. Many people believe that after his retirement, MJ no longer had what it took to return to his old self. A lot of people believed that the Sonics were going to be able to destroy them with their defense. and a lot of people believed that the death of his father would continue to affect him on the court. But what they didn't know was that it was precisely that factor that would bring him back to his best. The first 2 games would be played in Chicago, and the Sonics had to make something happen if they didn't want to be defeated like the rest of the teams that had tried. So they, and especially Gary Payton, started to use their most lethal weapons. Of course, on many occasions, we're not talking about basketball. Even though the glove was making his shots, Michael was doing the same thing. Whether it was from the paint, from his beloved mid-range with his incredible shots from the low post, or in ISO from the top of the key. But if one thing was clear, it was that Payton would not make anything easy for MJ. Shoves began to occur between the two. Unsportsmanlike gestures were becoming more and more common. Elbows were flying in a completely dangerous manner, and Michael was putting his body on the line for a reason. He wasn't backing down. He wanted to show Gary that he wasn't afraid of him. Although Payton, a master of the legendary art of instigation, got his way from time to time. And he even had the courage to stare into the very eyes of the player everyone feared. He was a man without scruples. After the Bulls dominated Game 1 with an incredible last quarter performance that allowed them to win by 27 points, the Sonics realized that they needed to turn up the intensity. They realized they had to step it up a gear if they wanted to have any chance against the team of the moment. Shawn Kemp continued to wreak havoc in the paint, flying higher than anyone else could fly, and creating highlights more out of NBA Jam than real life whenever he got the chance. And Gary was still at it, getting extra possessions with his creative ability on defense. When Payton wasn't paired with Jordan, the rest of the Sonics players were still trying to unsettle number 23. The philosophy was the same. Only the defender had changed. To get a good look, MJ had to fight. He had to paddle through the green tide that tried to make everything as difficult as possible. But between sweat, hard knocks, and battles that ended on the ground, there was a moment that served as a climax. A moment that even to this day still haunts Gary Payton's dreams. I don't care about black Jesus. Years later, Payton spoke of that particular moment. Don't care about none of that. You ain't gonna talk crazy or nothing, so I took it as a challenge to always go against him. He brought everything out of me, you know what I'm saying? And they were always considering him the best offensive player and me the best defensive player at our positions. I didn't care about that. I'm not backing down. You play basketball just like I play basketball. I'm talented just like you, so I don't bow down to anybody. Even though his attitude was necessary when you're facing the GOAT, that energy ended up playing against him. Because Michael Jordan went off in that Game 2 for 29 points, 6 rebounds, and 8 assists. Not only that, but with a 36-point performance, Michael dismantled the SuperSonics in Game 3. A game in front of a hostile Seattle crowd that could only watch as a generational player stole their hopes of repeating the 79 feat. Payton had lit a fire that neither he nor the Sonics could extinguish. But with a 3-0 deficit, Seattle showed its determination to prove that the story wasn't over. The Sonics, led by Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp, who combined to score 46 points, managed to defeat Chicago in Game 4. In front of their home fans, not only were they superior throughout the game, but they also destroyed the Bulls from the second quarter on. And what's even more incredible, in the last game in Seattle, Game 5, the Sonics completely stopped the Bulls. They only conceded 78 points and were able to win the game by a difference of 11. For a moment, it seemed like the tables were actually turning. The Sonics will eventually travel to Chicago to continue fighting for their dream, but Michael, he'd had enough. He wanted to prove that those expectations would be in vain. Seattle players had traveled all the way across the country, only to come back empty-handed. Jordan never had an open look. Every shot he scored was with an opponent in front of him. Every drive he attempted was met by multiple Sonics defenders. And for that reason, Michael had to bring out his playmaker side again. He generated so much attention with his baskets that, for the next few plays, defenders couldn't get away from him. And when he got the ball, his magic allowed him to find the best option. Again, and again, and again, Michael found the open man. But every now and then, he would send a friendly reminder to Seattle's defense. The defense had to choose between letting him score or another one of his teammates. And the pride of the Sonics players usually went for the second option. With another 22-point, 9-rebound, and 7-assist performance, Jordan managed to win Game 6. He made his father proud of him from beyond the grave. He made a statement to all the basketball world. I'm here again, and I'm here to stay. Of course, he wasn't lying. The Bulls didn't just beat the Sonics in '96, clinching the fourth ring of the Jordan dynasty. That was just the beginning of the second three-peat that elevated Jordan above basketball. He wasn't just an athlete. He wasn't just a player wearing a Bulls jersey and balling out every night. His attitude in the face of adversity, in the face of the toughest defenses anyone could imagine, which often pushed the limits of what was permissible, served as an inspiration to the next generation. It doesn't matter how hard you hit. What matters is how hard you're able to get hit and keep moving forward. Michael proved that the best defender of his generation was not enough to stop him. He showed that if things didn't go well for him, he was able to contribute through his teammates. And above all, he proved to be the most influential athlete of all time. And in that emotional moment, dedicating the victory to his father on Father's Day,
To my kids, to my mother, my brothers and sisters, this is for Daddy. I'm very happy for you.
Jordan reminded the world that greatness isn't just about talent. It's about heart, resilience, and the will to honor those we hold dear. What's your take on this unforgettable moment? Share your thoughts on Michael Jordan's tribute to his father. If this touched your heart, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to stay updated with all our latest content. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.